Apple Computer, founded in 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne, began in a California garage with the mission to make personal computing accessible to everyone. From the revolutionary Apple I and Macintosh, Apple sparked a technological evolution that transformed how the world works, communicates, and creates. I'm here with Ken Zerbe, a former executive at Apple, who's there from the very beginning to share his experiences with the history of Apple. I am here today with Ken Zerbe, who was a former executive at Apple Computer. So Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about your life, where you were born and raised, and what your family background was like?
I was born in Vinemont, Pennsylvania, Vinemont, a very small village of a farm community in Pennsylvania.
What kind of technology would you say did exist in your childhood
Well,
time period?
In 1935, it was pre-World War II.
You would say the word technology meant like electricity to you?
I don't think the word technology may have been invented then yet. I don't know. At least I didn't have it. And I'm not sure when I did finally realize technology, except much, much later in life. But the other is we had obviously no telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And later, after we moved to Adamstown and we did get a telephone, we had a party line. And there were 2 or 3 parties on the line. So we had the technology of the day.
Forward time a little bit. Tell me how you got from Pennsylvania to Silicon Valley and Apple Computer.
I had navigated successfully to 1976, and I was recruited, and I had my own small business at the time, and I wanted to expand that to the West. It was an East Coast business that I thought, well, maybe it has national appeal, and I decided that either San Francisco or Dallas would be my home base, and I came to San Francisco, and while there, for some reason, I've never known the answer to this, I was contacted by a headhunter who introduced me to American Microsystems, a semiconductor company. And they finally gave me an offer I couldn't refuse, and that's how I got to American Microsystems in 1976. And that's when I learned about semiconductors, and our primary customer was IBM, so that's when I may have discovered IBM for the first time, and so on. And that's how I got to California. And my practice was to go through the telephone calls that had arrived, and those that I recognized, I need to call them back. And those I didn't recognize, I would put on my credenza, and I'll get to them. I got a call from a friend of mine, and he alerted me about a telephone message that I received, and I looked in my pile, and it wasn't there, so well, maybe it's back there. That telephone call happened to be from another headhunter who was looking for a chief financial officer for Apple Computer. So I met with him, and that's when he told me about the founders starting in a garage and selling their computer and a VW bus, I think, to finance the start of Apple and so on and so forth. And I met with the CEO of Apple the first time. And of course, coming from the East Coast, I was wearing a suit and a vest and a tie and all that sort of thing. And he was wearing a t-shirt with a message on his chest. And after we met, he wanted me to meet with some of the other staff, and I did. I was introduced to one of the board members. I met Henry Singleton. And after that, I got an offer. So after 2 weeks, I got tired, I guess, of saying no, and I said, okay, let's do this. And that's how the relationship started.
And how has Apple impacted your life as you've seen the start of all of it?
I believe it's all magic. Now, other people who know what they're doing and know the bits and bytes and all those kind of things, they know it's not magic. They know it's a process. Mm-hmm. All I know is that when I joined Apple, we were in the process of producing the Apple II for the world. Mm-hmm. And the world just couldn't get enough of them. So I knew there was something good going on, and later on, obviously, as I remained with Apple, I discovered that these Apple IIs did a lot of things, and then Apple III came along and did a little bit more, and then Lisa, and so on and so forth. But each time there was a major expansion of performance, how performance was measured back then. And the early Apple II, essentially with the help of a couple of software inventors, you had Excel, the spreadsheet, and word processing. And that drove the process, and that's when I also discovered productivity. So that to me was the foundation of why this model, this technology of Apple was going to go somewhere. One of the interesting things is that as we grew the company, and it grew very rapidly, we had to grow our number of personnel and so on and so forth, but there were no large buildings we could either and or afford or were available in Cupertino, so we grew up in a lot of smaller buildings. And that's why, I was in charge of finance, so we were in one place, and Steve Jobs may have been in another place, and manufacturing was in another place, and so on and so forth. Remember, I joined Apple when I was 43 years old. Steve Jobs was 20. So not only did we have a function, finance versus marketing and technology, we had an age differential. So there wasn't a lot of communication, personal communication between Steve and myself, because we obviously had different things going on in our lives because of our age differential. By the time 1980 came along, when we decided to take the company public, we also realized that we couldn't continue to grow the company as rapidly as we wanted if we had to rely on those distributors. So we set about to acquire all of our distributors, which we eventually did in the between the 1979 and 1981 time frame, I believe. And that was one of those growth steps that we had to make. But yes, we did what we felt we had to do.
More about your creative energy. Did you ever think that Apple was gonna grow big? Did you think that it would just stay in California and other parts of the world, or would you think that every single person that you see probably has an Apple product?
Well, I think we realized after a short time that there was an appetite supported by third-party people who were creating software products for Apple. So this was a collaboration. A lot of people knew early on that some of these technologies would converge, like computing and communication, the telephone. I didn't quite see that. Obviously, I see it now, but I didn't quite understand that, and that's why I'm in finance and not in technology. But the bottom line is that a lot of people saw convergence of some sort, and I'm not sure they had it all defined at the point in time, but they knew it was going that direction. Steve Jobs was one of those. And that's to some extent why you see the Apple positioning that you see today with what this little thing that you hold in your hand does.
I want you to I want to get your input on how technology has transformed the way we live as human beings now.
Goodness. Well, I guess everything we do now involves technology one way or another.
It is clear that Apple's journey is far from over. With a legacy built on innovation and forward-looking vision, the company remains at the forefront of shaping technology that seamlessly integrates into our lives. Apple's story is not just about products, but about inspiring progress and redefining what's possible in a rapidly evolving world.